Hello legends! In this video, I'm going to show you the step-by-step process of how you can plan, prompt, and build a full stack app from scratch. The demo that we're building today is largely based on ChatGPT from OpenAI, where you have a bunch of historical chats that you can go into and you can have continuous conversations with. So I can come here and say, tell me more, and I can continue this specific thread of a conversation and have the agent respond, or I can go into a new thread and have a totally separate conversation. Now, the cool thing about this app is that right now I'm signed in as Bart at test2.com. I can sign in as a totally different user and I will not see this specific user's chat history. So for example, tell me about the Bermuda Triangle, write an email or maths. So let's sign out. Just going to sign in as a new user. And here we go. We're signed in as a different user and we have totally different chats available to us. So if I go into this dream car chat and type in, what about the Subaru WRX? Send it into the agent, I can keep having these conversations. Now, the actual backend for the chat conversation is run by our AI agent in n8n. So yes, this is a very simple agent integration, but what I'm seeing more of is that people have these complicated n8n workflows that have many nodes that are easier to manage within n8n, and they're looking for ways to actually integrate them into the front end of a portal. So I actually show you exactly how to do that, and it is super easy. Now, this app is truly full stack because it has a Replit front end. It has n8n for the backend integration for the AI agent chat function. We also use Supabase for the authentication to have multiple users be able to sign in and privately use their own chats and view their own chats. And then we also have the entire database running on Supabase as well. So in this video, the very next stage that we're going to be doing is actually going through the entire planning stage of this app, understanding what the core functionality is, understanding what the main navigation pages are, when and where n8n plugs into the picture, how the Supabase database needs to look, and we even plan out the entire relational database together. Now, I also go through the entire build in Replit. I show you exactly how I vibe coded this app. I don't use the Replit agent. I actually use the Replit assistant, which is its little brother. And I have a technique which actually works very well. It allowed us to prompt up this app in stages and actually build it out very successfully. And then at the end of the video, I also show you how to publish the app so that it's not just in testing mode, but it's actually in live mode and accessible on the internet. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, so you guys are just seeing the highlight of how the app works, but at this stage in the video, I actually haven't started building out anything. So we're going to be building out everything from scratch together. I've got a blank Miro board for our initial planning. I've got a blank n8n canvas to build out our agent together, a brand new Supabase project with no tables in it, and then no project in Replit either. So literally everything from scratch. Now, our first step is to actually understand what our app does and plan everything out. So what we want to do here is actually understand like what's the purpose of the app, what kind of functionality does it need, what kind of basic UI, like what kind of pages does it need to support that functionality, and then how does the Supabase database have to look to also support the functionality. That'll make some more sense in a second. And then when and where does n8n plug into things. So this is actually really important because I think a lot of us just go directly into the tools. We start immediately building in n8n without fully understanding exactly what it is that we're building. We go into Replit and we use some half-baked prompts, and then really we're just like spinning our wheels, getting nowhere. So the better way to do this is to actually just plan everything out from the start. And then one thing you'll find is that when we go into Replit later on to start prompting our agent, since we have entire clarity over the entire app, we know what pages it needs, we know what the functionality, like when n8n plugs into it, we know what kind of data we need to send between systems, how the database looks. It literally makes prompting the agent so simple and so easy, and it makes the agent's output extremely accurate as well. So I built out many projects using this specific process, and I actually don't even use the agent. When I build out apps in Replit, I just use the assistant, which is the original version of the agent, which is a lot more peeled back and it has a lot less like functionality, but I've got the most success using the assistant. So even later in this video, you're going to see my AI coding process in Replit, and I think you're going to love it. So the very first thing, which is really what we've seen in the highlight, is that what we're building today is an AI internal chat application for our business. The core features are that we want to have our staff be able to sign in independently. So if user A signs in, they can have a chat with our AI agent. And then if user B signs in, they can only see their chats but not user A chats. So there's some kind of authentication, there's a bit of privacy in the app. The actual chat experience, we're going to take inspiration from this chat GPT window, which is what you would have seen in the highlight. So I'm going to show you how to take this and actually get Replit to build it out looking like this for us. The actual agent we're building out in n8n. So when you watch this video and when you see this build, you're going to think, oh, it's so simple. Why didn't we just build it out in Replit? And the answer is we could have built it out in Replit, but a lot of us actually have a better ability at building out automations visually. Even I prefer to build things out visually sometimes in n8n too. So I just want to show you how to actually integrate these two systems together. But yeah, for sure, you could definitely build everything out in Replit if you wanted to. We'll be managing, we'll be holding all the conversation that we're having with the AI agent in Supabase. And actually, for some of the functionality on the front end, we also need Supabase to store some information for us too. So we'll see how that works in just a second. And then, yeah, as you know, we're using Replit for the actual front end. So to get started with this process, we know how the actual app functions now. Let's just write some of those things down. We want to have user login. So we want to have some kind of authentication. We want only, so user A only sees user A chats. So that basically means if someone else logs in, they don't, you don't just see everyone's chats when you log in. And we also want to have the ability to have multiple chats plus chat history. So chat history is that when we're in the app, if we want to get out of the current conversation, go to another chat, start a new one, go back into an old one, we can do that too. And then we know for our stack that we want to use, n8n is for the chat agent. We want to use Replit for the UI, Replit for the, for the UI or the front end. That's probably better, front end. And then we also want to use Supabase as our database. Now we're using Supabase because it actually gives us the ability, firstly, this is a really popular production-ready database. This is better to use than something like Airtable or Google Sheets. So this is one of the reasons why we're using this. I want to get you familiar with using something that you probably would use more in real-world applications. And actually, at this stage, I want to quickly just highlight two videos. So this initial process that we're doing, I created a video explaining exactly why we're doing it and how to do it in more detail. This video is about systems thinking, and this is all about before you go to the tools, plan out what you want to build, understand what you want to build, and therefore your output, like the actual automation or the app that you're building, is you have much better outputs with that. Now, the second video is relational databases. So these are the most common databases that you use when you're building out apps and automations. This is the database that we're using in this video. So if it ever gets a little bit confusing as to why I'm building out like this, you can just go into these two videos and just get some more context. So there's some additional resources that you can watch. Now we have the core requirements of the app, and now let's actually start building out the functionality or the actual interface. So the first thing we need to facilitate this user login and this privacy, where user A only sees user A stuff. Let's actually change the color of this so it's yellow because we're currently working on it. Multiple chats and chat history. Okay, so the first thing we need to have is a sign-in page. So the sign-in page is going to have very basic elements. We're going to have an email input, and then we're going to have a password. And then a button that says sign in. So this looks pretty lousy as it is. We don't have to worry about this so much. This is mainly for us to visually see what we need. And then also later on when we go to Replit, we can just give it an indication of, hey, we need 3 pages. They need to have these basic buttons. And then Replit will be able to keep working with that. So this sign-in page, the actual login process is going to be supported by Supabase. So Supabase has a lot of different functionality, by the way. One of the things that it does for us is Supabase. Actually, I'll just write database. Supabase, I like that more. Supabase. So one of the things that it can do for us is, yes, store our information in tables. The second thing that it can do for us is provide this authentication function. So it's very easy for us to implement this. We can use email address and password. In Supabase, we just need to go across to authentication, add a new user into here, and then when we're in our app, we just use the email address and password from that specific authentication table, And then we have secured authentication into our app. So when you're building this out, if you wanted to build this out by yourself, you'd actually have to encrypt this information in your database. There's like a whole process about how to do this. Supabase, with a couple of lines of code, actually does it for us. The second thing that we get here, which is I don't want to focus on too much in this video, is that when we sign in using Supabase, their authentication method, we get an additional object, which is like the session object. And we can use that session object while we're inside the app, so that if user A comes and signs in, then they refresh the page, user A, if they refresh the page, leave the page, whatever, and they come back in, we actually keep them signed in as part of that session. So that's a really good, like there's a bunch of different benefits here for Supabase. So we have our sign-in page, and we also have user A only sees user A stuff, because when user A signs in, we'll actually see how later, by more functionality in a database, we're able to fully separate the data. So we have the session management from Supabase as well, which is awesome. Now we want to have the ability to have multiple chats and chat history. So our second page that we need to put here, I'm just going to call this main page. So on our main page, kind of like your main login page, some things that we want here are add new chat. So we need some way to actually start a new conversation somehow. It's like a new chat with an agent. So a button that says add a new chat, and then we also want to have list of old chats. List old chats. So let's say we come into here, we start a new chat, we have some kind of conversation. If we want to come back into this main page, we want that chat listed here. We can once again start a brand new chat, and then if we come back, we might want to go back to that first one. So we want to have this, loop. We're able to kind of go and come as we please. So we're going to have that all in this main page. List old chat, list old chat, list old chat. Okay, so what was our other requirement? We're working on this one. Let's put it yellow as well. Multiple chats and chat history. Okay, so when we click on this add new chat button, or we click into one of these old chats, what we want to do is also have the actual chat experience. So on a chat page, what a regular chat window would look like is something like a big text box where you hold all the different messages that were sent into the chat. So text box. And this is going to be kind of like if you're using WhatsApp, you have on the right-hand side your messages. If you're using WhatsApp, on the left-hand side, you have the other person's messages. So that's the actual chat box we're having. We then want an input box, a text input box, which is going to be where we send our message into the agent. And then we want a button that says send. So like send message button or send button. And I think if we just zoom out and look at this functionality again, we have user A log in, so you have multiple users log in. User A only sees their own stuff, and then multiple chats and chat history. Okay, awesome. So we actually have all those bits and pieces plugged in there. n8n chat agent. Okay, so at this stage, where does the actual chat agent plug into? So what we can do is we only need the chat agent or the n8n workflow, so n8n agent, to plug in at this page, at the chat page. And actually, what we'll really do is when we press this text input button, this send button, we're going to capture the payload from this chat, which will be the text input, and send it as an API call across to our n8n webhook. So that's how we're making the connection here. This n8n agent, so let's say we just have a webhook here. I know I said we don't want to get into the tools, but I just want to make sure that we visually understand and see what we're talking about here. We have this agent node. So when we send the message into this webhook node, which is going to have the information from our actual app, we'll go back in just a second. We also have the ability to have memory over here. So the memory for this agent, we actually want to plug it into Supabase as well. And the reason we do that, if you haven't built out any chat agents in n8n, is because it actually allows us to store the user messages and the agent messages. Because the actual agent itself doesn't just have a working memory of all the conversation it has, we have to add that as context. So when you add a memory variable into here, or the memory tool into here, you're actually able to bring in the previous messages by the agent, previous messages by the human, and then in this specific run, the agent will be able to generate the next message based on the history. So we want to plug it into Supabase. Now, another thing that we need to do is also store the messages in this text box somehow. So the Supabase, we know at a high level, just has to plug into this text box as well. so that when we're actually having a live conversation, the message that we send is going to be in that text box, and every subsequent message, like the replies from us, the replies from the agent, are all going to be shown in this text box. Interestingly, whenever we go into one of these old chats, like if we just bring up the fifth chat in the queue and we open up the chat page, we also want to have all previous chats and all chat messages stored too, so we can just go in and see what the conversation state is. So at a high level, that's how that architecture looks. We have n8n chat agent just at that very last page. Okay, Supabase database, so we're already meeting that requirement, and we're already meeting the Replit requirement because we're just going to be using Replit when we're actually creating this app. So one thing that we haven't done yet, which is extremely important before we go away and build things, is we haven't designed the schema of our database. We haven't designed the tables that we're going to need in our Supabase. Because if you go into here, what you need to do is go into table editor and create a new table. With no tables, we're not storing any data. So once again, this is going to be a really good time for you to just flick over to that relational database video. It is a little bit long, so maybe you can just try and skim through, or maybe just watch this for now, watch that video later and come back to this section. But what we need to do at a high level is we need to store all the different components or entities of information. So the first thing we need to store is users. That's an entity that interacts with our app. So I'm just going to say users table. We also know that Supabase is holding our authentication. So Supabase over here, we have our table, but they also have the authentication users table. So what I'm going to do is, we don't need to create the actual outline for the authentication table, but just visually so we can see it, we need to just make these connections. Authentication. Okay, the authentication table is here. What else interacts with our app? Okay, well, what else is interacting here that we need to list and store so we can actually display this on the front end is chats. We need the ability to start a new chat and list old chats. Okay, so we have to have a chats table as well. And then the final thing, can you guess what it is? So we've got users, we have chats, we have the authentication here. What's another entity of information that is stored in this app, or that has to be stored in this app? Messages. So the actual exchange between the human and the agent. So we have over here, messages table. So at a high level, these are the 4 different entities of information that we need to store to actually make this app run. So for example, if we want to list all the old chats in our chat table, what we need to do is have, firstly, an ability to add a bunch of different chats. So in relational databases, what you do is the first column here is always a primary key. Primary key at a high level is a unique ID given to each record in a specific table. And then if I ever want to reference this chat for a different table, like I want to reference it in a users table, which is not what I would do, but now this UID that was over here, the primary key, here becomes the foreign key. So yeah, you can watch that video that I linked before to get more information about that. But if I use that terminology, now you'll understand. Okay, so the next thing for us to do is to plan out a little bit more about this chat table. So we have the chat UID, which is the unique value given, so we can actually distinguish between different chats. We have the chat name, chat underscore name. Let's actually bring this out a little bit more. Okay, actually I want to make these both the same size. Sorry guys, that has to be the same size for me. Let's bring this out a little bit. Chat underscore name. Okay, so now that we're storing the chat ID, so it's a unique chat, and then the actual chat name, we can list the old chat names here, so we can just distinguish between them. And then the other thing is that, okay, so one thing that we had over here was when the user A logs in, they only see user A things. So at this stage, if we just log chats like this, and we try and make some kind of functionality, so I'm just going to bring this over here. If we try and do some functionality that when the user logs into the main page, and we hit the chats table and say, give us the list of chats, what we're doing here is we're actually going to be returning all this information because we don't have any variable here to actually differentiate between which user does this chat belong to. So what we need to do, we need to have a chat user thing here. So in this case, it's going to be a user ID. Now, what this means is that when we have user A sign into the app, they're going to be into this main page. we can now, because of the session, we can actually just do a filter and say return all the chats that are relevant to user A, and then we can list them in this section over here. So actually this chat table is pretty much complete like this. There might be a couple of other columns that we want to add a little bit later, but this is actually the supporting functionality to make sure that we have user A only sees user A stuff. So one thing that we didn't do earlier is we didn't fill out our users table. So the user ID. So in this case, this is actually the foreign key, but for the users table, this is the primary key. So user ID stays the exact same. Let's bring this out a little bit. So for user ID, we might store some information like the user's name, and this is where you would actually store different bits and pieces. Like, let's say for the user, you wanted to store some kind of like logo, like an image of the actual user. You might relate it to the users table, and then when you sign in, you might have like additional functionality that says, hey Bart, welcome back, and maybe their profile picture. So because it's a pretty simple app, I think for now, this might be enough for us to actually have user underscore name for our users table. We're going to be taking this into ChatGPT a little bit later anyway, just to kind of finish off our brainstorming. So this is enough for now. We had the authentication, which we're not going to be building out because it's already done by Supabase. And the final thing that we want is messages table. So with the messages table, similar to the chats table, what do we want to do here? We want to be able to store each message. So let's start building this out. We want to be able to store each message, and as you might have starting to see now, every time you start a new table, the very first thing has to be the unique ID of that specific item or that specific record in that table. So it's always the primary key is the first thing that you're noting down here. So message ID, so for each message, if we just come into here with user A, for example, and then we're showing the list of messages, how do we know which chat the message relates to? So this is the actual chat page. We have messages. So what we need to do is actually relate the messages to the actual chat as well. So in this case, we want to get this chat ID. Let me just change the convention to make it simpler for us to understand. Chat ID. So now the actual messages table has the message ID, which is grouped into the chat. And in addition to this, we also want to have the actual message itself, so message content. I'll just leave it as message for now. So this is like whatever we're displaying, this is going to be displayed inside the text box. So if it's a human message or it's an agent message, we want it to be displaying here, which means we just had the final filtering for our messages is who is the actual sender. So in this case, sender, and where the sender can be a human. This is just for us to know what the options are, human or what do we have here? Agent. So at this stage, I think this is pretty much all the tables that we need. Let's just go through this once again. So if we come into here, how do we actually see on the chat page user A's chat messages? So the first thing we need to do is actually pull in the actual chat ID. So let's say, I'm just going to duplicate this. At this stage, we show this specific chat ID, and let's say this relates to chat number one. So we're showing chat number one, which is here, chat number one. And then to show all the messages from chat number one, we want to be showing all the messages related to this field that is chat number one. So let's say we just build this out just to show us visually how this is going to look. So message ID might be 1 as the first ID. Chat is going to be, let's say, for messages, let's just make this 11001. The chat ID is going to be 22001, just to show us this is going to be the 22 notation. Hi there, and this is going to be human. So if we just assume we have all these things like this, okay, message ID is always going to increment, has to be unique. The chat ID is going to stay the same, so it's always related to this specific chat. And then we have the message hi there, hi back, whoops. And it's going to be the agent. And then we have how are you, and that could be the human again. So if this was our database of messages tables, and the chat ID for this was 22001, we're now going to be pulling all the messages here, hi there, how are you, and this hi back. And we would show it in a sequence like hi there is the human, hi back is the agent, how are you? and that's what we would show. Sorry, it might be a little bit confusing, guys. I'm trying to kind of cover off the relational database and how it would show into here, but that's how we actually pull back that information. So that's why the messages table has to be related to a specific chat, because on the chat page, that's how we filter this table, and then we filter the actual messages by sender and human as well. So this will make more sense in just a second. Sorry if it got a little bit too confusing. Let's just backspace all this stuff. Let's actually just leave that there. This is what we need to backspace. So at this stage, I think we've actually designed pretty much everything. We have a very good idea of our 3 pages. We know we have to have sign in, a main page, and a chat page. The agent comes in at the very last step. And then we have our databases and our data over here. Okay, so at this stage, we've designed the entire app. We've got a very good understanding of the 3 main pages that we wanted to have: a sign-in page, a main page, and then a chat page. So now I'm just going to take all this information and have a quick conversation with ChatGPT, and basically just explain what we want to build, explain the flow of the app, so the 3 pages, and then explain the different tables that we have, and ask it to consolidate our thoughts, see if we're missing anything, and ultimately to actually help us create the prompt for our Replit assistant. So I'm just going to record a voice note. So I'm creating a chat application for my business where staff can actually sign into this application. For this sign-in, you can see there's 3 pages for the app. The sign-in page is going to be have an email input and a password input, and the user can sign in using those credentials. The sign-in is going to be managed by Supabase authentication. When the user is signed in, they're going to be met on a main page. On the main page, they can click a button that says Add New Chat, which is going to add a new chat to the list. When they click into that chat, they go into a 3rd page, which is a chat page. On that chat page, it's going to be a very similar experience to something like ChatGPT or WhatsApp, where there's a text box that holds all the messages from the staff user on the right-hand side, and then all the responses from the AI agent on the left-hand side. There's a text input box where you can write your message that's going to be sent to the agent, and then a send button. Now, the actual messages, they have to display in a text box, but they also have to be sent via webhook across to the n8n agent. The agent's going to take that message, generate a response, and then reply back in that same API call. And then that response from the agent also has to appear in a text box. One of the things that we have to do is on Replit side, when we get the actual message from the human or the message response from the agent, we want to store them in the text box, so they have to go across to our Supabase database. The challenge is that on the main page, whenever we go into any of our previous chats, we actually have to also show the history of messages in the chat box. I've also included a basic outline of what tables I think we need for the Supabase database: a users table to hold the user and their name, a chats table to hold the chat IDs, the chat name, and then how they are related to which user. So you can see on the main page we have a list of chats, and that's what we're displaying on this chat table. And then the messages table is related to the chat ID, and then the actual message of the chat is there, and then the actual role of the sender is there as well, so if it's a human or an agent. And then this messages table is what we display inside that text box on the actual chat page. Let me know if you have any questions about what we're building, or if it's clear. Let me know if there's any changes we should make to our database schema for Supabase. Otherwise, I want to start actually prompting a Replit assistant with building out this app for us. So the first thing I want to do is actually build the sign-in page. I want to get the agent, the Replit assistant, to build the sign-in page that has an input for an email address and a password, and then also has the Supabase authentication method used. Okay, so let's transcribe this. Awesome, let's send this, and let's see what the agent says back to us. And now for Replit, let's get this project set up as well. So if you actually just type right into here, you're going to be using the Replit Agent 3. And the Agent 3 is actually, it's pretty amazing. But I started using Replit like 1.5 years or 2 years ago, and I started using the Replit Assistant, which is like the little brother to the agent. It has a fewer capabilities, but I actually learned to do it that way. So whenever I use Replit, I just use it the old method. So instead of using the agent, what I want to do is I want to go to this Explore More button. I'm going to go into Developer Frameworks, and over here, If you have coded before, if you haven't, you can actually just choose the template of an app that you want to build. So if you want to build a website, you can just click on here. You'll be able to deploy a website. If you want to build a, like what we're building today, a JavaScript app, like if you want to build an automation, or if you want to build a web app that can run functionality, you can choose Node.js. And Node.js is just the way that you deploy your JavaScript online as like an app, like a standalone app. So I'm going to hit remix, and I'm going to call this YouTube demo chat, and I'm going to go to use framework. And now Replit's going to take basically that template of Node.js and install it into a new project. So on the left-hand side, what we see here is the Replit Agent 3. We're not going to be using this, but the Agent 3 does have the capability to like plan the build, actually build it out as well, and do some testing on its own. I'm just going to close this because I don't want to be using the Agent 3. I want to have more control, so the Agent 3 would just be more autonomous. I want to be the autonomous person here. So we're just going to be using the Replit Assistant, which is this button over here. This warning basically says that, hey, this is the little brother to the agent. It can do fewer things for you, so you have to do more of the things. If you're comfortable using this, then go ahead. And the final thing before we go back to ChatGPT is, on the right-hand side, these are all the template files. So a Node.js app will typically have a package.json. This file is just it's a static file that just lists all the stuff like the settings for your app. One of the key things is the dependency section. So I have the analogy where I'm like, if you're a chef and you work and you want to make a cake and you're in the kitchen, to make the cake, you might need an oven to actually bake the cake. So one of the dependencies you would list over here is oven. And these dependencies are only local to this app. So if we're building a bake cake function, we will need to make that dependency listed in package.json. And then index.js is just the placeholder, first file that you have for your Node.js, for your Node.js app. This is the entry point of your app. So if you want to make some kind of webhook call into this app, it'll enter into index.js. Or if you want to run some functionality, it typically starts from index.js. But we can actually add other files into here, like a HTML file, a CSS file, different JavaScript files. So we can actually build this out, and we will be building this out. Let's come back into ChatGPT. So this is super clear. You've done a great job breaking it down to a clean UI, data model, and parts. Summary is the user signs in, the main page lists their chats, they can open a chat, the messages load, send to n8n, n8n returns a message, and both are stored in Supabase and displayed live. That's awesome, that's what we want. Store the chats plus messages in Supabase. Okay, this is all good decisions, yep, fair enough. Schema improvements. So here's a refined version that will remove a couple of problems ahead of time. You do not need to manually store users. Supabase already has a users table, so awesome. We can optionally create a profiles table if you want names or roles. So for now, I don't think we'll create the profiles. Chats table, so we can sort chats nicely, that's awesome. Messages, 2 small changes. Timestamps, that makes sense, so we know which order they're based in. And then for use role instead of sender, because it's the industry standard, awesome, perfect pickup. An example query you'll later need. Load messages for a chat in order. We can start with the sign-in page. Okay, so this is the actual prompt we're going to be using. Build a sign-in page using vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Use Supabase authentication. Input field, sign-in button, on success, redirect to a main.html. Displays errors if login fails. Automatically persist login session using Supabase built-in session management. So that's one thing we mentioned earlier in this video. Because we're using Supabase auth, we have the session management, so that's awesome. And files to create. So we could have just gone into the Replit Assistant and basically got this to help build things out for us. But yeah, my workflow, I've just gotten really used to using ChatGPT a lot. User already logged in, redirect to this. Okay, so let's just copy this. Do not build any additional pages, only sign-in page. Okay. So what I might do is I might just make one change to this. Let's go into here. Okay, so let's paste this into our assistant. So I'm going to change the final sentence to say build the sign-in page, and when the user is signed in, display the message, you are signed in. So basically, it's going to have like a separate page after we're logged in, and I just want to display to us so we know very easily, are we signed in or not. So this looks good to me, and yeah, I want to say please build all necessary files in order for me to test this app, i.e. build the server too. So sometimes with the assistant, I don't know what this notification is, sometimes the assistant will take your instructions very literally, and it might not actually go away and build all the different files that it needs. But one of the core files that we need for this to run is we need a server. So we're going to be building out a bunch of different interface pages, like the sign in page, the main.html, which I think is after you sign in. So additionally to these pages, I'm just saying like, hey, also build the server, so we have we have some way of actually pushing this app to be live. Okay, so let's check out some of these files. So we have, I help you build a complete sign-in page with Supabase authentication. Let me create all the necessary files, including a Node.js server to serve the application. So that's our primary server. Our dependencies, awesome, including the Supabase dependency. We have a public folder. So public / means that it's in a public folder, like the first thing is a folder name, and then the /, and that's the actual file. So a sign-in page, a main page, which I believe is going to be a sign-in page, then the main page. That's awesome. The client.js, this must be like the sign-in JavaScript mechanism, or the actual, okay, this is the interaction with Supabase. That's the sign-in mechanism and the main.js functions that we have. What else do we have here? A .env example to fill out the credentials. Awesome. And then we have to set up the Supabase credentials, go into here, replace these with your Supabase credentials. Nice, click the run button, test the authentication. Okay, I'm just going to click apply all and hit OK. So now on the right hand side, we're going to see all those files and changes implemented into our app. So we'll just give it a couple of seconds to run through all these things. There we go, we have a public folder. We have all the files added to our public folder. But the one thing that I do want to make sure is that, okay, we have a .env example. So I think over here we have in public in the Supabase client.js. So if we click here and go into here, yep, they put our keys directly into the app, and we don't want this. So I think the assistant just does this to get things going, but they also let us know they have an example file for our keys that we need to save. So .env.example is just like an example of how it should look. So I'm just going to get out of here. I'm going to go into the root folder, which, okay, we're still in a public folder. I don't want to be there. I'm just going to click on index. I'll move it out in just a second. .env. So we want an env file. I want to bring it out of the actual public. I don't want my env there. I want it in my project root file, and the root file is the lowest level of storage. And here, I just want to paste in this. And really, I want to change these values. So Supabase URL, let's go to our Supabase account, project settings, and I think data API, there we go, has the URL. So let's paste that into here. And then Supabase a non-key, and into API keys, a non-key copy, and into here. Okay, so let's go to the assistant and just mention I am using a .env file with the Supabase info. Please hook up the app to use that file. Fail to enable visual selector. I don't know if I'm selecting something by accident here. Okay, so I'll help you hook up the app to use the .env file for the Supabase credentials. Awesome. So we want it in the .env file because this is more secure than leaving it on the front end of the app where someone can come in and possibly take some of those keys and use them for themselves. The dependency for us to use that .env file, it's a special type of file, we need to install this. So yeah, I could either install it there or just apply all changes. I typically go apply all changes anyway. So now all the different files in the app would have been updated to actually work for us. Awesome. All the yellow stuff is changes, checkpoint made. And now I want to display this app. So I actually want to test this app out. I'm going to go to this plus icon, go into preview, and let's see what spins up. Okay, so we have sign in and password. Now the final thing for us to do is if we want to test this out, I actually have to add a user into here. So I'm just going to wait for this to load, add user, create a new user, Bart at test. test.com and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, create user. Awesome. So now I should be able to, yep, I know it's a bad password. I should be able to sign in. So Bart at test.com, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sign in, failed to fetch. Let's see if anything here in the console lists the error. Okay, so nothing. I'm just going to get this, sign in again. Let's attach the file over here. Awesome. I have an issue. Actually, one thing I will try before I do this, I have the .env file. Oh, okay, interesting. So there is a .env file and they've just doubled up here. Okay, let me just clean everything up. I don't know why that was two sets of information there. Let's go back to the preview and I will turn off the app. Well, too many notifications for password settings. I've just toggled this. So this green triangle button means if you ever make a change to one of these files, typically you have to turn off the app and restart it. So by pressing the square button, it just like shuts down the app. Pressing the triangle button, it just restarts it with the new information. So before I tell the assistant that I think something is broken, Bart at test.com, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's make sure that it wasn't just that. Okay, awesome. Okay, these updates are a bit annoying. There we go, so you are signed in. So actually everything worked. Good that I didn't go to the assistant. I just quickly checked that file to make sure everything was good. So now everything is working well. Okay, so now it's time for our step 2 instructions. Okay, awesome. Next set of instructions are sent. So over here, I've just went through and I said the app is working. I tested it out. And I said, can you please give me the SQL command to run to build the database in Supabase? It just makes it easier for me to not have to go in and build everything manually. And then I also said I need the next step of instructions to be able to actually go through and build out the next part of the app. So it looks like for these SQL commands, we actually have the 3 tables. So profiles table, which we will just use for now, but we don't really need to use this. Chats table, messages table, and then we have row level security and policies around users being able to add information to their own tables and only see information from their own tables. So using this method, we're actually able to quickly build out all the tables that we want and install appropriate security. So that's actually awesome. Let's hit run, and we should, in just a couple of seconds, have everything successfully done. So success, let's go into our table editor, and we can see chats table. Okay, awesome. No entries just yet, which makes sense. The messages table, awesome. And then profiles, just in case later on we want to have, the full name of the user and display that in our app somewhere. So that's perfect. Everything is working. And then the prompt to the agent, so the main page plus a basic chat page. Okay, so let's inspect this prompt. We have create the main.html page and main.js file. Unload check if a user session exists, otherwise redirect to a sign-in page. Awesome. Display a button that says add new chat. When it's clicked, I love this. Like, this is giving it all the minute details that actually Replit will need, so it knows how the functionality, like what it has to do. So when you click a button, refresh the list of chats, so you display all the current chats. That kind of small stuff is stuff that we don't normally think about, but that's what actually helps with the UI, so that's awesome. Create the chat page as well and the chat functionality, and then no messages yet. Okay, awesome. This actually looks pretty good. So reuse the existing Supabase client.js, include navigation links from the chat page. Awesome. Keep the code modular and well commented. No n8n integration yet. That's coming later. Okay, nice. Let's take this. Let's go across to here and paste it in. And let's see what our agent comes up with. I'll come back in just a few seconds. All right, let's go through all these changes. So I help you create the main page and chat page with the Supabase integration. Let me update the existing files. We have a bunch of file changes, and now you need to create the following tables in your Supabase database. Okay, table for chats and table for messages. Actually, while we're here, I might just take the schema, I think from database. I can get the schema visualizer, and I'm just going to upload this into the Replit agent, so it actually knows that we have an existing table and to use this schema. I actually have this schema in my Supabase database. Please use this schema for our build. Okay, what I might do is I might just apply these ones first. I'm not sure if I should have applied that first and then sent a message or second, but we'll see what's going on here. Okay, cool. So now we have all of our changes made. Let's go to apply all, click OK. Awesome. So I think everything is good to go. There we go. Automatically restarted your app after saving the files. So we have add new chat. Okay, awesome. So as you see, the app was restarted, but we're still signed in because we have the session management in the backend. So no chats yet. Click add new chat to start. Okay, add new chat. We have a chat over here created with this specific, okay, the date is the actual name of the chat. Let's click into here. And then we have, okay, this is a little bit doubled up. It looks a little bit weird, but no big deal. Let's see what happens in our database if we created a new chat and if it did anything in here. Okay, awesome. So we created the chat and it logged it into here, and there's no messages, so this will be empty because we have no messages, and profiles we don't really need. Awesome. So at this stage, I think what has to happen, we shouldn't really see two of these, but what we will do first, let's go back to the main page. And the chat is listed here. So while we're here, I actually just want to fix this up. And I'm going to let the agent know that I want to name the chat myself. So let's go back into the assistant mode. Let's add the file. Please make an option so that when I add a new chat, I manually enter the name, or if I don't, then use your fallback. I also want to be able to change actually I don't want to change the chat name for now. That might be too much functionality in Supabase. Let's just leave this for now. Let's paste this. Okay, so that was pretty quick. So now we have some functionality that will let us name the chat manually. Let's let the agent push this change through, and then we'll restart the app. There we go. Let's go back into the preview. Yep, we have the logged in session already. Let's add this. Okay, nice. And I want to do Bart's chat. Hit OK. Nice, Bart's chat. Let's refresh this table. And we should see the second chat, Bart's chat over here. That's awesome. That's actually perfect. Now, the UI itself isn't exactly what I want. And if you would watch from the start of this video, it's not actually what we have at the end. So we'll change this a little bit later. And now I actually want to do the second stage, which is basically building out the functionality of this app. But right now it looks very weird. So I'm going to take this and the bottom of this. Let's go back into our agent. So we have here, and let's go. Okay, so we have our instructions ready. I've just basically gone to the assistant and asked it to prompt up the agent to remove this double page. And then I've said that I want to get the functionality built out so that when we're adding a message into this chat window, that the button actually sends the message and the chat ID across to our n8n agent, so we can actually manage the conversation with the agent as well. And for that webhook to stay open until the agent returns a response, and I've let it know what kind of response key we're going to be using. And then I've said that every message that we send and we receive to log that into Supabase as well. So let's go on with the next step. So I'm just going to send this into our agent, and while we're waiting for the next prompt, I'm going to open up with our webhook in n8n. Let's make this a post request, and at a high level, I know it's going to be a webhook going across to an AI agent, and then we need a webhook response over here. So it's a very simple agent. We'll be building this out incrementally anyway, so respond using the respond to webhook node. The chat node for now, we're just going to use OpenAI awesome. And a prompt will just be helpful assistant, respond in a short and happy response. Response. Very nice. And for our memory tool, we'll actually build this out in a second. For now, I'm not going to be using the Supabase memory. I actually just want to use simple memory to show you how we're going to be using the conversation variable to store the memory locally within our workflow. So I'm just going to save this so it's ready. Let's see what our next prompt is. Amazing progress. Update the chat.html and chat.js. Remove the duplicated chat UI. Ensure only one container is rendered. Message container, text, and send button. Load the chat ID from the URL parameters. Okay, on the page load, fetch all messages and sort them by the created date order. Display them in a messages container. Awesome. Insert a message into Supabase. Call the following n8n webhook with a post. Very detailed instructions after every message. Auto scroll to the bottom of the message container. Yeah, this is great. So this is actually even giving additional instructions that I wouldn't have given, like automatically scroll to the very top. So this is extremely helpful. Let's copy this. Let's go across to our assistant. Let's paste it in the prompt into here. And the one thing we need to do is get this test URL. Go back to our assistant, and where is this? Okay. Now we have our test URL. It's a post endpoint, and we're sending the chat ID and the message content. So let's give this to the assistant. I'll come back in just a few moments when we have the changes ready to go. Okay, cool. So looks like we are ready to implement the next set of changes. All right, done. Automatically restarted. So we have new chats. We've got Bart's chat over here. Untitled chat for some reason, and send your message. Okay, so this window is a little bit too big, but let's see what happens. Hi there. Let's open up our execute workflow. Send message. Unexpected error has occurred. Please try again. Okay, what happened over here? Memory. Okay, no worries. So the reason we got the error in Replit is because we haven't configured this correctly. So now we can actually just do this. So we have our AI agent is going to receive information from here. So that's the message. And then our memory variable over here is going to use the session ID from the webhook. So where do we get... okay, this agent didn't actually run. Let's run this step. Okay, it's not actually picking up. Is there anything wrong with this? There we go. We just had to run that. We should be able to get this going. So now our variable here is the chat ID, and I want to send the last 10 messages. So we're using chat ID because this is the conversation in this specific chat. As we know, each time we start a new chat, it has its own ID. So for this chat, let's just generate a message, make sure it works. Send it into there. Hello, great to see you. How can I brighten your day today? Awesome. So let's just re-execute this, and back in our demo, hi there. So we might not get the response that we're expecting just yet. No, because we didn't feed it through. So let's send a JSON, and let's send first incoming object, but we need to use the key as output. So what we're going to do is we're going to quickly go into our files, or actually what I won't do that, I'll just go into the agent. Can you change the n8n webhook response parse to use output? So I could have got into the files and just tried to find the specific file that sends the API call across to n8n. But in my instructions before, I said, hey, we're going to use a key in the JSON response, which says response. But I forgot that n8n uses the key that says output. That's why our agent wasn't able to process the response back. So this change should fix our issue. We restarted the app as well. Awesome, let's come back into here. Let's go into Bart's chats. And if I just execute this, and I say, hi there, oops, execute workflow, waiting for the test event, hi there, some error occurred. That's very strange. Let's just restart this. Hi there, hope you're having an awesome day. Let's make sure that was the actual response. Hey there, hope you're having an awesome day. Let's execute one more time, and I want to see what was my last message to you. And I want to get the response that says your last message was hi. Okay, so that means now we have the memory of this chat. But as we can see, the actual displaying window here, it just keeps extending. So I want to change the way that the chat works, so that the actual container of the chat is static and it fits the page and it doesn't actually scroll like this. It's a little bit annoying. And I also want to change the UI to not go everything on the left-hand side. I actually want to do user on the right-hand side bubble and assistant on the left-hand side bubble. So let's come back into the assistant. Okay, I've just uploaded the file to the assistant and I'm just going to ask it to make some changes. Okay, so my follow-up instructions are, can you please make the chat window static so that it actually stays as a static element that fits to the screen and that the contents inside that element are scrollable so it doesn't just keep extending and making our page longer and longer. And then I also want to make the user messages on the right-hand side as a bubble and then the agent responses on the left-hand side as a bubble. So with those instructions, we should get very close to the final stage of our app before we actually now just go across and start redesigning it to make it look a little bit sleeker and nicer. So okay, we'll give the agent a few moments and I'll come back. All right, let's apply the changes. Nice, restarted the app. Let's have a look. So Bart's chat. Okay, well the cool thing is that it fixed the actual user bubbles, so the right-hand side and the left-hand side. But we are still getting, yeah, just the chat window doesn't fit to the element doesn't fit to the actual page. So I'm just going to say now back to Chat GPT. Maybe it'll help me with the instructions. Okay, so this prompt is now just saying, hey, for some reason when we go into our app, the actual entire screen is still scrollable. Can you help us get the agent to just code it up so the, yeah, like we said before, the chat window is just static and then it's scrollable inside the actual window. So also this is a great milestone. I also mentioned that everything else is working, so the actual messages are added to the database and they're also displayed properly within our messages history. And let's see what the recommendation is here. Okay. For some reason, the entire page is scrollable and the div is not static. Here are some instructions from ChatGPT. Okay, let's see if this helps it. Okay, nice. Looks like the agent spotted the issue immediately. It's scrolling because of this specific setting. So let's apply this and see how it comes out. Wicked, restarted. Let's test this out. So we're signed in. We have the session. We have Bart chat. Okay, now it seems to be broken entirely. Still not fixed. Now the page is static and the chat window is static but not scrollable. Let's see if this fixes it. All right, let's try this solution. Okay, changes made. Let's go to the preview. Bart chat. Nice, everything is scrollable in here. Okay, so at this stage, before I keep testing, I actually just want to activate this to make this permanently work. And let's go into here. So we could put some authentication. I think that would be good for a part 2 video. So there's a bunch of different things we could pick up and yeah, split up into another video. But for now, I'm just going to go back into our assistant and say, can you update the n8n endpoint to this? So now we should actually use the production version. So we don't have to keep pressing the test mode on n8n. We can just kind of keep flying through. Nice. Looks like I made a change very quickly there. Let's confirm everything is good on this side. So just looking at the n8n workflow, so just some things that we're doing here that are not best practice are, we shouldn't have doubled up on a database. So we should be using just the Supabase database directly and use the exact same one that the main app is using. So that's a no-no for us. Also, we could be doing webhook security over here. We could be building out a double agent system where we have like a mediator agent and possibly a check agent, depending on the severity or like the risk involved with this system that we're deploying. The mediator agent or like the initial agent could check for is someone trying to do some kind of prompt injection to try and return the list of tools that we have or whatever resources or the prompt that was given to the agent. So yeah, this could be definitely built out a little bit more in another spin-off video. But for now, I think the assistant is ready to actually go. So I'm going to go to Bart's chat. Nothing is on here. This is actually active, ready to go. How are you doing? and we should get a response back. I'm doing fantastic. Awesome. Back to our main menu and going to this original chat here. How are you? That was actually pretty quick. What was my last message? So we want to be sure that we actually get the message, how are you? Awesome. So the actual, the separation of chats within the agent itself, because we're using the chat ID, that's working perfectly well. And I think at this stage, everything is working as expected, as it should be. And from here, I now want to actually go and try and steal some of this chat GPT design and get our agent to implement it for us. So a couple of points before we keep going is that you can see there's a plus button here, and this is the functionality to add a file into the chat. We also have a microphone, we have a live chat experience, and then we have this drop down for a model selector. For us right now, for the MVP, we're just going to be getting this image and just saying, hey, model the actual app based on this simplistic design. We could definitely do file uploads. We can send that as part of the data object that we're sending from Replit across to n8n. Since we're using webhooks, we can actually receive files as well, so that's awesome. If we wanted to have a model selector, for example, changing the actual intensity of thinking or going into a legacy model, we could also do that. We can build the selector into the webhook call, and then we could add a like a set variable here and have a model selector node. So you can have this node, or you can use the choose model and go for model selector and just vary it depending on which model people want to use. So you can actually dynamically choose between GPT-5, GPT-4 within the one chat. So that's actually really, really cool. But for us, for now, we're just going to keep things very simple. So we have our screenshot. Let's go across to our agent. And I've just uploaded the screenshot that we had from the chat GPT window. And I'm saying, hey, can you replicate this kind of simplistic design across all three of our pages? Don't add any additional functionality that you see here, just purely go off the aesthetics. So let's give the agent a couple of moments to make some changes. Okay, so it looks like the agent has taken some minimalistic ChatGPT style design and applied it to our app. So let's apply all, hit OK, and we've changed the HTML, okay, the chat page, the main page, and then the styles page, but not the login page. So we'll see what happens there. Okay, restarted. Let's go back into here. All right, nice. This is looking pretty good. So let's go into the chats page. All right, that's actually very neat. How are you today? Nice. That's nice. We can go back into here. I'm not super a fan of that. Let's go to sign out. Let's see the sign out page. Wow, this is actually not bad at all. Okay, so Bart at test.com, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sign in. Nice, looking good. Okay, sign out. From here, I'm just going to spend a few more moments trying to make some design changes to the app, and I'll come back to you when I'm done. Okay, so after a bit of back and forth, I actually settled on using a very similar style to OpenAI. I said, can you make it so that the chats are listed on the left-hand side panel, and then the main right-hand side panel actually is the chat window showing all the message exchanges. And then for our preview, this is what we have. So left-hand side, you have all the chats. You can create a new chat, or you can go into one of the existing chats and then open up the actual conversation here. So there we are. We're just loading it into the database, and here's the entire conversation. Nice. And now our final step to actually get this app to be live, if we want to share this with our entire team so they can access it from anywhere online, we just go across to this Publish tab on the right-hand side and click on Publish. And now Replit's going to do all the heavy lifting in the background. They're going to take your app and post it online. You initially get posted with a Replit URL, but then you can go across to your own domain name provider and then create like a redirect so that instead of your app showing this Replit URL, it's actually going to show your domain name /chat or something like that. So that process you can just do externally. But once Replit actually loads up your app, it will just take a couple of more seconds for it to be deployed live. And there we go. We now have this URL. So if I click this URL, we're now taken to a totally separate live website link that we can literally send to everyone on our team. And it has the exact same features. So you have to log in, you can only see your chats, no one else can see your chats, and yeah, everything is working. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching this video. If you're actually watching to the very end, maybe you're interested in learning more about these concepts around systems thinking, designing these apps, doing the thinking about figuring out how the database should look, and then a bit more of a manual process to actually build out these apps that are more powerful than your standard prompt and go app. If you do want to learn more and speak to different people that have similar interests to you, please come down to my school community. I'll drop a link in the video of this in the description of this video. And actually, the capstone course that I have is called the Builder course, where I teach you about these technical concepts around systems thinking, databases, using code and no-code tools, and a bunch of different stuff that I think will be helpful to you in your journey as well. All right, thanks very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.